2 weeks ago, Penn State was 5-0. Their offense looked on point, but the defense had work to do. Coming off a bye week, it appeared as if no work was done and Penn State was not ready for the Big Ten. I'm Kendall Stalicky, joined alongside Logan Bourandas and JC Colavita. Penn State losing on the road to Michigan, a top 5 team, may not be surprising, but Penn State being run off the field 41-17 puts the future of this team into question. There's a lot to cover this week, so let's get into it. So, to be fair, a really solid team can lose on the road. We saw it with Alabama at Tennessee, which I'm not going to compare Alabama's performance to Penn State's because this game was just a disaster. Michigan was ready. Penn State was not. They were beaten in every area of this game, and we're now looking at yet another post-bye week loss for Franklin. So, Logan, I'll start with you. What happened during the bye week, and why was Penn State not ready to play?
You definitely can't compare Penn State to Alabama, but when you take a look at the 2-week break that Penn State had, there just wasn't a lot of accountability from Coach James Franklin. When he was doing his press conferences over the week, there wasn't talk about the turnovers and the fumbles in the Northwestern game the game prior. It was all about recruiting. It was all about kind of avoiding the topic of the Wolverine game and kind of just focusing more on recruiting and how they're going to spend the time off and get well rested. Well, what kind of look is it going to be for recruits when you lose that badly to a team that's a top 5 team in Ann Arbor on the road in that kind of environment? It's not going to be a great look for your team, and that team did not look well rested at all on either side of the ball. Not much went right the second they got off that plane in Ann Arbor, and definitely not going to be a great look moving forward as Penn State tries to salvage its season.
Guys, let's be honest. The world expected Michigan to win this game. They did. And they went out and did it, but nobody thought it was going to be this big of a slaughter, because let's call a spade a spade. It was a slaughter. Now, the good thing for Penn State is they didn't commit 5 turnovers this weekend, but they didn't really do much. What I wanted to see from James Franklin is some kind of urgency off the bye. You know, he was hired by Penn State to beat Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. And he's been here for a couple of years. His record against those 3 teams, 7-18. You know, not very good. Not very good at all. This team just did not come to play. They were flat out beat, but the offensive line for Michigan really was the difference maker. You saw Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards just rattling off 8, 9, 10-yard runs every play. There was no 3rd and longs. That is why Michigan came to play, they dominated, and look where they're at. They're headed for another college football playoff appearance.
Yeah, and after a game like this, there's going to be a lot of talk about who's to blame. Was it Clifford? Was it the offensive line? Was it the defense? And one thing I wanted to mention was there was a notable tweet during the game by Penn State's own Micah Parsons questioning the coaching staff and asking why were no adjustments made during this game. So, JC, I'll start with you this time. Who do you think is to blame for this loss?
The coaching staff, 100%. James Franklin does not call the plays. If you look at the first half, there were only 2 plays that really worked. That Sean Clifford crazy read option play that got them in position to score a touchdown, and then a long deep ball to Harrison Wallace that put Penn State in a position to kick that field goal. But other than the Curtis Jacobs interception and return for a touchdown, this team didn't really do well. And look at Manny Diaz, 418 rushing yards given up. Are you kidding me? We knew Blake Corum was going to go off. He's a Heisman contender. But Donovan Edwards, what a game for this kid. He absolutely rattled this Penn State defense. I mean, Penn State went forward on 4th down. They didn't get it, and then Edwards takes it to the house. You can't do that. And then Sean Clifford, I mean, he only threw the ball 19 times, but 37% completion percentage, that's not it. That's not going to win you a football game. And Clifford alone, he's not going to win you many games, but he's going to lose you some games. And the other thing I want to talk about is the fact that they didn't really get pressure on J.J. McCarthy. He didn't really have to do well. Yes, they did get the interception, but other than that, McCarthy was just a game manager, and he let his running game do his thing.
Yeah, and J.J. McCarthy kind of looked like that 6-year pro that Sean Clifford's supposed to be rather than the sophomore in his first game against the Nittany Lions. But I'm going to expand more on what you said, kind of on the offensive side of things. And you talk about the halftime break, not really making any adjustments. Well, it's going to be tough for your defense to go out there constantly, possession after possession, trying to make stops when your offense has the ball for 2-3 minutes at a time. The offense tried to go this no-huddle, hurry-up type offense when it was kind of even close in that second half. and it just didn't work for them. There was no adjustments made at all. Sean Clifford was struggling to throw the ball even before he went out with his shoulder injury, and the rushing attack, which had been so good week after week with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen winning consecutive Big Ten Freshman of the Week awards, there was no adjustments made, and the rushing attack struggled, and you saw what kind of duo that Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards can provide for the future. Take a look at Michigan and Penn State. They were on similar trajectories a couple of years ago. Those games were very close in years past, especially that whiteout back in Beaver Stadium a couple of years ago, but you've seen the improvements that Jim Harbaugh's made with his squad year after year to eventually win that Big Ten title, and even with the quarterback controversy to start out this year, they haven't skipped a beat and still like one of the top teams in the country, and Penn State just been on a downward spiral. They talk about recruiting. I mentioned it last time out. James Franklin's talked about trying to recruit and get a better program through that, and it just hasn't worked out so far, and you kind of see where Penn State's been kind of stagnant these past couple years.
Yeah, and we see good teams lose all the time and lose badly, but they'll come back hungry the next week, ready to win and turn things around, and Penn State has done the opposite in the past few seasons. So guys, do you think Penn State is looking at a repeat season, or can they turn things around?
Well, you look at people on these past segments, they talk about Penn State going 12-0. I even said 11-1. I'm no stranger to this kind of thing, but you take a look at what this Michigan game kind of shows you. Penn State's still in that good but not great tier. Michigan, Ohio State, they're still the elite class of this Big Ten Conference, and they look like they'll be showing it year after year. And Penn State's schedule, it does look pretty favorable. I mean, there's still question marks on the screen because they are just that, question marks after a game like the Michigan one, but the Minnesota whiteout one should be a good chance for Penn State to kind of bounce back. They've had to deal with the blackout, the orange out, the maize out. Now they finally get their own whiteout in that kind of environment before Ohio State. But the remaining 4 games on their schedule are all very winnable games against teams that are kind of at the bottom of the Big Ten right now. And Michigan State, they were ranked to be inside that top part of the Big Ten, but they haven't played like that so far. The Nittany Lions, they do have that upset kind of somewhere in the year. It was Illinois last year, kind of spiraled their season, so one of those 4 games could provide that. But 10-2 is still very possible for this Penn State team.
I do agree with you, Logan, but overall, I think that the Nittany Lion faithful as a whole, they need to lower their expectations for this team. Since 2016 when they won the Big Ten championship, there hasn't really been much improvement. Yes, they went to the Cotton Bowl a couple of years ago, but there's high hopes every year, and I'm afraid this team, they're just not in that upper echelon of not only Big Ten teams, but teams in college football around the country. They need to lower their expectations. Penn State needs to get to where they need to be. They can't focus on teams like Ohio State and Michigan. They're not going to be there. They have 9.5 more years of James Franklin, and I've been saying this for years. Great motivator, great recruiter, not good on game day. And that's where it counts. It counts on game day. And frankly, switching gears now, Sean Clifford has been here for 6 years. Thank you for your service, but Drew Aller should be starting the rest of the way. Sean has really contributed a lot to this program. He won the Cotton Bowl, but it's time for the future to start. The only reason Sean would continue to start is to build his way towards potential an NFL contract, which, let's be honest, he's not going to get. So I would give Drew Aller the rest of the starts just as experience as they head into the next season with higher hopes, because Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, and Drew Aller are going to have that extra year of experience, those extra couple of games that will just improve them mightily.
Both really good points. Hopefully there's not another loss as bad as Michigan, and Penn State fans can hope that this team rebounds. That's all we have for this edition of Penn State Sports Night. The next 2 weeks will likely tell if Saturday's loss was an isolated incident or something more. With the whiteout against Minnesota this weekend, followed by Ohio State, Penn State has a lot to prove. Can they compete with the Big Ten, and can they get back into the top 10? We'll have to wait and see. For Logan Bourandas and JC Colavita, I'm Kendall Stalicky. Thanks for watching and have a great night.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night. We hope you liked that segment.
And we're sure there's other Penn State Sports Night segments that you are going to love as well. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.
And check us out on social media for updates and behind the scenes clips and pics. Follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.